I'm a humble man.
that you feel you don't belong.
I won't say you should follow me.
You are welcome. You are loved. Join us, and we shall reach the promised plain.
I'm not boastful, and my chorus is more soulful.
One of joy, one lacking pain. We are the cult of I am aware.
Don't say it. I can see
You
it.
feel you don't belong.
I don't wanna. You don't need it. Once again, we don't need you. What I'm meaning. Don't say it. I can see it.
Join us.
I don't wanna. You don't
We shall
need it.
reach
Once
the
again,
promised
we don't
plain.
need you.
One of joy, one lacking pain. We are the cult of
Hello, and welcome back to the Cult of Odd, where we dive into the big questions and the even bigger absurdities that human civilization has to offer. I'm your host, Odd Man, and I'm here to remind you that human rights shouldn't be a debate. They should be as natural as gravity. And yet, here we are, huh? Today we're asking the big question. Why on earth have we turned basic decency into a partisan game? That's right, I want you to pull up a chair, kick back, and get comfortable, my oddities, because it's going to be a wild ride into the bizarre world of human rights, where we debate things we shouldn't even have to think about. Imagine going into a restaurant and ordering a burger, and the chef asks, "Are you qualified for this burger? Have you earned these fries?" Absurd, right? But that's where we are with human rights. That's where we are in the country right now. We're trying to dictate whether or not individuals are worthy of certain things. That's where we are with human rights. And they're supposed to be as straightforward as breathing, yet somehow we've managed to turn bare minimum food, water, basic respect, and a myriad of other things into shit that sounds as exclusive as a yacht club membership. See, if you don't look a certain way, if you don't sound a certain way, if you don't walk a certain way, if you don't sit a certain way, if you don't pee a certain way, you're not part of the club. And the caveat is, even if you do look a certain way, or sit a certain way, or stand a certain way, or pee a certain way, or breathe a certain way, you still might not be part of the club because there's extra qualifications that need to be in there. All right. So, because we were talking about this during the last episode, and I had a week off where I was sick, we've actually gotten a little bit of correspondence, if you will. What up, Skelly? Hey, Sim. So we've gotten a little bit of correspondence about this, and of course all of the names have been changed to protect the innocent. And let's dive into some listener mail, which is new for us because, you know, we didn't used to get these sorts of things. Believe it or not, I'm not the only one with thoughts on this topic. Our first letter comes to us from Sam, who writes, "Dear Odd Man, if everyone gets human rights, wouldn't that lead to anarchy? People might start demanding things they don't deserve." Well, Sam, I can kind of see where you're coming from. It's a solid point. If you're living in a dystopian novel, yes, we should all be terrified of a world where people don't suffer just to survive. Imagine the fucking chaos. A world where everyone's healthy, safe, and dare I say it, fucking happy. The horror, right? We're terrified. And no, Sam, giving people their rights doesn't create anarchy. It just makes them less likely to burn the system down. Weird, right? So let's talk about a few things. Let's rewind back to 1948. The world was picking up the pieces from World War II. People gathered to draft the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Imagine them all sitting there saying, hey, maybe everyone should have food, shelter, water. Hey, you know what? How about they have the right not to be tortured? You know, that seems obvious, right? Yet somehow certain folks heard this declaration and thought, now hold on. Do we really want everyone to have dignity? See, they treated basic decency like it was some rare mineral. And here we are, 70-some years later, still debating things like housing and healthcare and basic stuff you'd think we'd have figured out by now. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point to is the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I want to bring that up real quick. This is the preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind. And the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief and freedom from fear and want has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of common people. Whereas it is essential, if man is not compelled to have recourse, as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, the human rights should be protected by rule of law. And whereas it is essential to promote the development of friendly relations between nations, the peoples of the United Nations have in the Charter reaffirmed their faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, and in the equal rights of men and women, and have determined to promote social progress and better standards of life and larger freedom. And the preamble goes on to state, as member states have pledged themselves to achieve in cooperation with the United Nations the promotion of the universal respect for observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms. A common understanding of these rights and freedoms is the greatest importance for the full realization of this pledge. Now, there are certain things within this, and you can find this and read it for yourself on our website under resources. You go to cultivad.com/resources, and it is the second link at the top. But this is a document, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, later on, because I have written this show and structured it as a certain way. But this is a document that the United States has helped enforce, but not adopted. Again, as I stated before, I've gotten several letters, and the correspondence has definitely been interesting. Let's go back to the mailbag here. Let's see what Skeptical Susan has to say. Susan writes, "Odd man, I just don't think we can afford all this human rights stuff. Who's going to pay for it?" And that's a common theme, right? Because if everybody's taken care of, everybody has what they need, Somebody's got to pay for it, right? Because we live in a capitalist society. Well, Susan, bless your frugal little heart. We've somehow convinced ourselves that feeding and housing people is an economic death sentence. Like, oops, there goes the budget we made. We made people less miserable. But here's a fun fact. Societies that take care of their people tend to actually thrive. I know it's shocking. Meanwhile, we're pouring money into things like, corporate bailouts, giant showy public displays of opulence and wealth, like the Grammys, Super Bowl, throwing yourself 3 fucking parties just to say you were elected. But, all that's totally fine, right? It's really become kind of disgusting. Like, I'm literally disgusted at looking at at society at this point, because the house is on fire, and we're like, "Ooh, look at the shiny! Look, it's so pretty." It's nice to be able to take my mind off the fire for a few minutes. Maybe put the fire out first and then worry about the shiny, pretty things. Well, that's just me. Now remember, I've given names to all these people to protect anonymity and goofiness, and the letters themselves were pretty fucking goofy. So, the names get a little weird. We've got one here from who I dubbed Paranoid Paul. Says, "Dear Oddman, doesn't this whole everyone gets rights thing open the door to freeloaders and people who just take and take and take?" And again, another common fear, right? Because that's what everybody's worried about, right? Remember when they were talking about a universal basic income? And was it Andrew Yang? Andrew Yang was running for president. And he was running on the platform of a universal basic income, where everybody basically got like $2,000 a month to take care of some of their basic needs, right? A lot of families, the adults, you have a husband and a wife. If both of them are getting $2,000 a month, that's $4,000 that a household has that they know they can count on that'll be there. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to go out and work for more. It just means that they have a safety net. And the biggest argument against a universal basic income is, well, lazy people just aren't going to work then. That's not true. You're going to have some people not work, sure, but you have some people who choose not to work now. With the system that you have agreed upon is the greatest thing since sliced bread, right? So what's the difference? Everybody's taken care of. You don't have to work so hard, maybe. Oh, you don't want that because, working hard for everything is a sense of pride for you. It's something that you can hold over somebody else, right? It's the freeloaders, though. They're the boogeyman of every conversation about human rights. Levi! But yeah, the boogeyman of every conversation about human rights. Like, there's an army of people out there waiting to exploit our kindness. They could be. Listen, we've been afraid of freeloaders for centuries, but guess what? The real freeloaders aren't the folks struggling to make ends meet. They're the ones at the top hoarding all of the resources and paying zero fucking taxes. Isn't it funny how we don't hear much about that? Right? Like, think about it. Socialism is bad, right? Socialism. It's evil creeping in every corner of the United States of America. It's ruining our way of life. Except the elites have socialism. The politicians have socialism. It's okay for them. We're all paying for their health care. We're all paying for every bit of their living expenses. Our taxes go to pay their wages. It's okay for them to take as much as they can from those that have very little. But God forbid we decide that that should be flipped, right? And those that have a lot, some would say a gross excess, well, they can't be expected to take care of the rest of us that have so very little. Now, here's a radical thought experiment. What if we treated human rights the way we treat coffee? You walk into a cafe, ask for a latte, and the barista doesn't give you a political quiz to decide if you've earned it. They just make your coffee. Basic decency should work the same way. But no, we've somehow made kindness and respect seem like a limited resource. We ration them like we're running out. But here's the kicker. Human rights aren't limited. Kindness isn't going to cause the economy to collapse. But making people struggle to survive, that's actually expensive. We just never talk about that side of it. Think about it. Right? So the reason we don't have universal health care, right, is because the insurance companies and the medical industry, they have lobbyists. And lobbyists throw money at politicians hand over fist trying to keep everything the way it is. We can't upset the apple cart because it'll hurt our bottom line. And it's like that on a lot of things. The housing market, the car industry, healthcare industry, education even, right? Education is kept at a certain base level at this point because we don't want individuals getting too smart, because if they get too smart, then the programming won't stick. It doesn't work anymore. Right? Look at Christianity. One of the biggest things that the Christians will tell you is a problem stems all the way back to the Garden of Eden. Knowledge. See, if you just believe and you don't think, then everything will be all right. See, Eve was kicked out of the Garden of Eden along with Adam because she ate from the tree of knowledge. Knowledge is the enemy of those who wish to control you. As long as you're stupid and you don't question anything, you'll be all right. But the minute you get a thought in your head, just any thought that is contrary to the narrative that they're trying to push, well, that's when the problems arise. Right? Let's look at this, all right? Right now, we are watching the systematic eradication of anything to do with trans individuals in a governmental capacity. Anything law-wise, anything verbiage-wise, all of it. They are systematically trying to erase it from the history books. Why? Who's it hurting? Well, it hurts the narrative. The narrative that they're trying to push is that we are a Christian nation and that Christianity believes that there is one man and one woman, and that's a relationship, and that there are only man and that there is only woman. But realistically, when you start looking at the Bible and you actually read the Bible, there's no real mention of it being wrong or right. There's no real mention of it whatsoever. Even the scripture that they like to quote against homosexuality is an interpretation of the text. And while we're talking about interpretations of the text, it's illegal, or not illegal, it's a sin to wear two fabrics of different kinds. It's a sin to modify your body in any way, shape, or form. It's a sin, I believe, to eat shellfish. It's a sin it's not a sin. What's the other thing I was thinking of is the rule of thumb, where it's perfectly fine based on biblical text to beat your wife with a rod no wider than your thumb. That's where the rule of thumb comes from, just so you're aware. But we're trying to push the fact that we're a Christian nation. And we're trying to push that fact because if we don't think and we just believe, then everything's going to be okay, right? That's what they want us to believe. And look at the education system, too. Look at the stuff. I'm older, okay? I am what I like to call an old man at this point, but I've looked at some of the textbooks for what kids are learning today versus what I learned. And what I learned was vastly different from what my parents learned about certain stuff, right? And you track it back. You take an incident, you take an instance of something like Vietnam. The text that's there on Vietnam is less today than it was when I was in school. And it was less when I was in school than what it was when my parents were living through it. Why is that? Why do we start truncating history? Why do we keep shortening everything down? We distill it to its most basic and simplest form. And we always try to paint ourselves to be the good guys, right? We don't talk about the nasty stuff that we did. We don't talk about the dirty, underhanded shit that we did. That's also one of the reasons why they're so worried about critical race theory, right? Is because it owns up to the fact that white folk did some bullshit. And that we maybe shouldn't necessarily be walking around with the high and mighty, we're so perfect attitude that we do. We're no better than anybody else, and nobody's better than us. But that's the mindset is you should have, is nobody's better than, you're not better than anybody else. When we look at how the world has been structured, and we look at things like the Declaration of Human Rights, and we look at the certain things that are in there. Let's pull that back up. Let's go to the theater. All right. Let's read a couple of them here. Article 1. All human beings are born free and of equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in the spirit of brotherhood. Article 2. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be independent, trust, non-self-governing, or under any other limitations of sovereignty. Article 3. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. No one, under Article 4, shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. Article 5. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. Article 6. Everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Article 7. All are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. All are entitled to equal protection against any discrimination in violation of this declaration and against any incitement to such discrimination. See, it sounds to me like it's pretty fucking clear cut. You're a human, you're free, you should not be infringed upon. Now, the Declaration of Human Rights goes on to mention access to food, access to shelter, access to health care. I really do encourage you guys to go to cultivad.com and go to the resources page and read through it for yourself. Because if we followed the Declaration of Human Rights, there are a lot of industries that are basically infringing upon our rights. There are gross and negligent amounts of infractions upon our human rights that are baked into the daily operations of this country. And some of what we're seeing going on right now with the way that they want to go after anyone who doesn't look like me and also doesn't have $1 billion or $1 trillion is a direct violation of this Declaration of Human Rights that the United Nations put together. And again, is something America has helped enforce in other countries, but refuse to adopt themselves. So, Guilty Gerald sent in, odd, maybe human rights are overrated. If everyone had what they needed, wouldn't people get complacent? It's true. Nothing breeds laziness like the guarantee of not starving to death. I know if I don't have to worry about where my next meal is coming from, I'm just not gonna try. Jesus fucking Christ. It's like the old saying, give a man a fish and he'll probably eat the fish and be grateful. We act like if we give people enough to live on, they'll just lie down and refuse to move. But oddly enough, when people aren't struggling to survive, they actually get more productive. They try harder. They extend themselves further because they're not so strung out. We forget how much stress affects us. Right? Think about it. Think about times where the times in your life where, say you were having a good patch, right? Good stretch of things. Everything was going smoothly. Everything was going all right. There were no problems. Bills were taken care of. You were actually ahead a little bit. You know, I know it doesn't happen often. But there have been a few times, I'm sure, over the course of your life that it has. You tried a little bit harder, right? You went after a little bit more because you didn't have the stress weighing you down of just trying to survive. But yet we think that if we remove that struggle, if we lessen that stress, we think somehow that means people are just going to stop trying. That they're just going to give up. If you ask me, that says more about the people that think that than the people at large. Because that to me says you would give up, right? If you're so worried about everyone else giving up like that, to me that says you're the one that's going to give up. That you would do that. And that is something that you need to fix within yourself. You do not need to project that onto everyone else. Because I don't believe for a second that's what's going to happen. And any system that you put in place, there will be people that will take advantage of it. Case in point, there have always been hackers. There have always been those that seek to manipulate the rules, the laws, the systems, what have you, to benefit themselves. You don't think billionaires and trillionaires happen by accident, right? These motherfuckers have found ways and loopholes to manipulate the system. They are life hackers. Some of them were born into it. Some of them are despicable people who have bought and sold people, essentially, in order to get to where they are. But you do not become a billionaire or a trillionaire and still be a decent human being. It's just not possible. You might be able to be a millionaire. This one was one of my favorites. That's why I kind of gave the name that I did is Conspiracy Carl. Odd man, don't you think human rights are just a tool for the government to control us? What a dumbass. That is, Simmons said it earlier. Jesus, what a shit take. Yeah, no, there've been some really fucking interesting ones come through. So, human rights, a tool for the government to control us. Ah, yes, the secret plot to control us with compassion. Classic government mind control tactic. Feed people, give them shelter. They'll turn into mindless drones because nothing says oppression like access to clean water and health care. Come on now. Like, seriously, come on. Keeping us sick, keeping us scared, keeping us stressed. These are the ways that they control us, keeping us arguing, keeping us fighting, keeping us in that mindset of us versus them. And the us versus them changes regularly. Right? Hey, I said before, I don't care if you're black or you're white or you're gay or you're straight or you're trans or you're I don't care if you're Mexican or Asian or any of those labels. You're human first. And we really all need to start acting like it. Because the minute we get that mindset that we all need to start acting like we're human first, the minute we get that mindset, they start to lose a little bit of the control. Right? I don't see a person of color and think that they're somehow less than me or that they're somehow better than me. I personally barely register the person's skin tone. I barely register the nationality, only enough to be respectful and try not to step on cultural things. I don't care what your gender is. Tell me what you want to be called, and I will do my best to remember and make sure that that's how I respond. I've got friends that have transitioned, and I will admit I make mistakes here and there. I don't mean to. I don't mean to dead name them. And I've gotten a lot better over the years because it does take a concerted effort. If you knew the person before they transitioned, to change your mindset to remember who they've become. And again, I will fuck up on occasion, and I don't mean to. It's accidental. I will say this, it is easier to
I
meet
swear
a
to God, I'll
trans
pistol whip
person
the next guy that says shenanigans.
post-transition and get to know them that way than it is to know somebody before they transitioned and know them after, because it's really fucking hard sometimes. I have one friend who I knew before and I'm getting to know after. And I get it right most of the time. But every so often, I will slip. I've even slipped with Levi on accident. And I met Levi before, like after. Right? I didn't know Levi before. But I've screwed up a couple of times and used the wrong pronoun. And Levi understands that I'm not doing it to be malicious. I'm not doing it because I don't care. I'm just kind of an idiot sometimes, and I screw up. Which, by the way, if you haven't already, go check out Talking Tremors. There's a link to it on our Friends of Odd, right there on the Cult of Odd website. Talking Tremors is kind of the definitive Tremors podcast. If Tremors is your thing, if you like giant man-eating worms that come out of the ground, Talking Tremors is for you. You're all lovely. But imagine thinking that human rights would be used as a way to control us. Yeah. Well, and you know, Levi, that I have never once, meant to be any malicious. And I know that the preferred pronouns are she, her, and I believe they. I believe they and them work as well, you've said. And the other friend that I mentioned, it's she and it's her. And like I said, I do my best. It takes time to learn. And I think that's where a lot of people need to be, is they need to be willing to learn. Eventually, it'll just be natural. Right? If you misspeak, right? If you mispronoun or whatnot, all you need to do is be corrected once, right? That's all it should take. And from then on out, it should be like perfectly fine. No different than, walking up, like back in like the 60s and 70s, right? The hippie hair. Everybody was used to boys having short, neat haircuts. And then guys started growing their hair out because they liked it. It'd be no different than walking up to somebody from behind thinking it's a woman and them turning around and it's a dude, and you'd be like, oh, well, okay, I get that. That's it. That's all there is to it. Once you're corrected, that should be it. But acknowledging people for who they are, acknowledging that every one of us is equal, that you're not different or weird or what other adjective you want to throw onto it, should be as natural as it comes. Again, human above all else. That's really what it should come down to. So here's my big question. What if we stopped making human rights a thing and just treated them as a given? We don't debate whether everyone deserves sunlight or the occasional glass of water. But we're out here treating dignity in healthcare like there's some sort of exclusive club. What if we just stopped? What's the worst that would happen? We'd stop arguing over shit. We might start getting along. Society might prosper. What benefit is it at this point for us to maintain that us versus them mentality? I can kind of understand it back in our tribal days, right? You've got a tribe in an area, and it's seemingly finite resources, etc., etc., etc. But we're not tribal anymore. We've built glass skyscrapers and had the Industrial Revolution. We live in fucking suburbia. There's no point to hold on to some of these archaic tribal beliefs. We used to think that people in other countries were so worse off, right? Like, we used to think, growing up, we would see it on TV. For just the price of a cup of coffee a day, you too can sponsor a child. And we would see the children, and they were living in poverty and mud huts with flies on them, and living in dirt and wearing like bottles for shoes and stuff like that. And that was our mindset. That was what we thought of the rest of the world, right? We looked at what we had sitting in our living rooms with our fucking recliners and our TVs and stuff like that. We were like, wow, we have it so great. It's so sad that those people over there don't have it so good. And, let me rummage through the couch and see if I can find change. Just the price of a cup of coffee. When in reality, that was only a tiny part of that country. And a lot of those tribes that they tried to use to promote UNICEF and things like that, they wanted to stay close to the roots and basically kind of stay out of society a little bit. There are some that needed water and things like that, but like nowadays you ask a millennial, not a millennial, you ask like a Gen Xer or even a Zennial what they immediately think of when they hear Ethiopia, and they'll probably tell you that they think of starving children and mud huts and things like that, when in reality there is a bustling metropolis. Same in a lot of areas of Africa and Dubai. One of the biggest eye-opening fucking experiences was actually going on Shahongsu, the little red book or red note or whatever, and seeing that the Chinese people are no different than us. In fact, they actually have it a lot better. We got programmed to believe that America was the greatest there ever was and ever will be, and that we'd have it so terrible if we went other places. But that's not true. We all live on the same planet together. Why are we not all working together to survive, to get along? What benefit do leaders like Vladimir Putin and fucking Kim Jong-un, what benefit is it to them to hold themselves up and live so closed off and then try to be an asshole to everybody around them? For what? You're going to be ruler of the planet? No. What happens too if you get pushed too far? What are you gonna do? You gonna nuke the area across from you? Right? A big enough nuclear bomb fucks up the planet for everybody, buddy. And even still, even if it doesn't fuck up the whole planet for everybody, like, we saw what happened when Fukushima melted down. We saw the effects as it seeped out into the water of the rest of the world. We have to stop believing that we are existing independently of each other. We have to stop believing that there is any difference between myself and people of color, or people that live in Europe or Australia or anywhere else in the world. We are all humans. We all need oxygen to breathe. We all need water to drink. We all need shelter. We all have blood pumping through our veins. We all are just desperately trying to get through to see another sunrise. And I really do hope that one day we learn to enjoy the sunrise together. That we stop looking at it as, well, the sun rised on me and not on them. I want to leave you with this. If you find yourself arguing over whether people deserve the right to live in safety, maybe it's time to reconsider which side of history you're standing on. If that makes you uncomfortable, just remember, reality is stranger, darker, and more absurd than fiction. But everyone, and I mean everyone, deserves the dignity that human rights afford us. Because remember, no one can give you your freedom. All they can do is place laws and rules to restrict it. No one can give you rights. These are inalienable. These are things that are yours simply from the simple act of sucking air every day. Human rights should not be a political issue. They should not be up for debate. They should not in any way, shape, or form be a discussion that we continue to have. Because the constant debating of whether this person or that person should be able to do this or that is taking up valuable time that we could be using to have conversations about things that truly matter. Instead of constantly fighting for individuals to just simply have the fucking right to exist, we could be working together to figure out how to reverse climate change, how to create renewable energy that will benefit all of humanity, exploration through space to see what's out there. But we get stuck in the petty way too easily. And we've got to stop letting our government control us. Because it's no longer a left or right thing. It's no longer a liberal or conservative thing or a Democrat or a Republican thing. We need to move beyond these thought constructs that confine us to truly make headway as a society and as a species. Because at the end of the day, too many have lost their lives over things that shouldn't even have ever needed to be debated. We should have never been able to look at another human being and deem them to have less worth simply because of the color of their skin or because of who they loved or who they wanted to be or who they wanted to be with. So many lives have been lost. So much time has been wasted. And yet here we are, having to get back to fucking basics. Because the concept of human rights seems to be something that it's hard to understand for folks. So we have to once again hammer it home. If you are listening to this, you are owed the right to a home, to health care, to clean water, to safe food, a clean environment. You are owed the right to feel like your voice matters, that you are equal. And it is time that we focus on getting that out of the hands of the people that don't want us to have it. I don't know how to go about doing that, though. I have ideas. They're not good ones. Because every time I sit and think about, well, how do we get it without, becoming the thing we hate, I don't come up with any good answers. Because we've tried to talk. We've tried to peacefully protest. We've tried to do it in a civilized manner. And the opposition, well, the opposition has done everything they can to infiltrate and twist and turn the perception through the media, through law enforcement, through the judicial system, and through the court of public opinion. All of it to twist it against those that are simply trying to ensure that the next generation doesn't waste as much time as the previous generations have on fighting the same fucking battle. So the question is what can you do? Right? What can you do to fix it? How do we stop arguing over things that we've been arguing about since the 1940s? I don't know. But I really am eager to see if someone can come up with something. That'll do it for this week. 1 hour. That's all you get. However, next week we are talking about your body, your choice. That's right. We're covering women's health care because autonomy shouldn't be optional. Join me next week. We have a contact page. If you want to be one of the letters that were read and you want to provide something more than the brain dead responses that we were getting, by all means use the contact page. We'll get it. And we'll read it on air, and we'll protect your anonymity. We'll give you a snazzy little nickname. But like I said, next week, your body, your choice. Women's health care, because autonomy should not be optional. Thank you for joining me. I love each and every one of you. And remember, we are human above all else. And it doesn't matter whether it's right wing or left wing. Humans don't need wings to fly. We just need an airplane. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great rest of your night.
Don't facts like that just wipe you out?
Napkin? No.